Hello there, AP Human Geography students. Let's learn all about some special topics that are normally covered in my in-class station activities, but because we're online, I'm doing it all online. So let's do it right now. Ba-bam. Okay, so I usually have this really cool little activity in class where students are like, wow, look at all these early cities and what were they all about? And the first cities on planet Earth came about the year 10,000 BC. So we've had about 1,200 years of cities, or 12,000 years of cities on this planet. And even way back in the day, the big purpose of forming cities was it would be a place of trade and a place of common expression. So it's either like a religious center or a place where there would be art and there would be specialized buildings. And to a very large degree, that is still the purpose of cities to this day. So cities are just kind of where things happen with big groups of people in society. And that's always been the case. All right, moving on. So let's here's some words that you got to pick up: slow growth and smart growth. So these are urban communities where planners have put initiatives in place that they try to decrease how much land the city is gobbling up every year. Ideally, you want to grow your cities up and not grow your cities out. Because the more we grow our cities out, we get more sprawl, we have to build more infrastructure, you're going to have way longer distance transportation, it's going to make commutes longer, and it's just going to make it a more difficult environment to have a kind of compact human space that doesn't affect nature and our animal friends as much. If you spread the city out over hundreds and hundreds of miles, not going to be a lot of land left for nature. Okay, so city planners who really want to follow these ideas, they're doing everything they can to advance public transportation, advance walking, advance bicycling, and this is doing a whole lot better in Asia and Europe today. And probably the one spot on planet Earth that's not doing very good about this is the United States of America. In our country, 83% of all trips are done by car. So there's hardly anybody in this country who does walking or bicycling to kind of get where they need to go, unless maybe you live in like downtown Manhattan or something. But like when I was living in South Korea, like even if they gave me a car, I wouldn't use it. I was always able to walk and use the bus or the subway system to get anywhere I needed to be. And that is a way better way for humans to interact with the environment and humans to interact with city spaces. So Las Vegas, stop building more houses all the dang time. We should instead try to cluster up and focus our civilization all in one spot. All right, sustainable development. This definitely is very similar to slow growth and smart growth, but it's this idea that you really especially have to consider the environment. If you're a sustainable development city, you've got a whole lot of green space, a whole lot of parks, got like a river run through the city, a lot of really equitable access with nature. And so many of the new city plans that I've seen really try to push this on people, where they're like, we want to have this kind of urban natural landscape that it's all kind of one in the same. Some good ideas with sustainable development would be like rooftop gardens, and what is it called? The Terra Bocca in Florence. There's this really beautiful building that's all about it. But yeah, so limit the consumption of land, limit how spread out homes are, and especially limit cars. Like every single plan for a new urban landscape calls for less cars, more walking, more bicycling, more all that stuff. So sustainable development is also going to be anti-car to a very big degree. All right, so here are some cool examples of cities that are modifying themselves to kind of fit the ideas of sustainable development, smart growth, slow growth, but these are especially sustainable development vibes. The cities Boston, San Francisco, and Seoul all used to have these big freeways running through the middle of the cities. And I couldn't find an old picture of Seoul, actually, but this is what it looks like today. And in all three of these cities, they decided to remove the main freeway in the middle of the city. And they just said, okay, cars, you got to go around the city. You're no longer going to be able to go through the city. And then they took out those freeways and instead built these big kind of public spaces. And I've never been to Boston, but I have been to this spot in San Francisco. This is, I think it's called the Pier 9 Wharf or the Pier 6 Wharf. It's a really cool spot. I've been to this spot in Seoul, and they used to have this big kind of freeway road running above this river. But then they're like, you know what, we're going to make this river a big public space. And I'm really glad they did, because it's a really cool, beautiful spot to hang out in Seoul. So I wonder if they'll ever do that in Las Vegas one day, if they'll take out the 15 freeway in the middle of our city and they'll just turn into one big, awesome public space. I don't know if they'd ever would do that, though. The 15 freeway is pretty darn important. But anyway, other cities did it. Maybe we could do it too. All right, and then the Galactic City model, also known as edge cities. These models are kind of the same concept, but it's where a city is very spread out, and there are almost mini city centers located a few miles away from the main city. I've got a map of Atlanta down there. It kind of shows how that vibe works, and I'm sure that downtown Atlanta is in the middle, but then all these Atlanta suburbs are kind of carryover versions of Atlanta. And even the city of Las Vegas, we are a galactic city with edge cities. And our example here is downtown Las Vegas, or the Las Vegas Strip, is our main city center. And then the kind of galactic zones off of the Las Vegas Strip are downtown Summerlin, stores along Blue Diamond, Green Valley Ranch. So there are these pockets of shopping and of kind of like mini downtowns all around the Las Vegas Valley, and it makes sense. And the thing about the Galactic City model in Edge Cities is like nobody really advocates for this anymore. This is kind of incompatible with slow growth, smart growth, and sustainable development, because all three of those strategies, you want to pack people in as much as possible. But galactic cities tend to kind of spread people out, and people then have to sort of go to their mini city to get some of their goods, but maybe they'll go to the main downtown area to get some specialty items every once in a while. Los Angeles is another excellent example of a galactic city, because Los Angeles has so many mini downtowns spread all around it. Okay, and now let's talk about America's racist past with organizing cities. And to a large degree, this is still visible in America today. In fact, I think I even read somewhere that Las Vegas is one of the most racially segregated cities in the country. That's interesting. But I'll go off this slide, though. So most cities in the Western world, but especially in the United States, divided the city by racial ethnicity. There were sort of certain racial groups were encouraged to live with others. And to a degree, that happened because of migration and the fact that there are these ethnic enclaves, so people did it purposefully. But in the 1960s, our society began to become more and more integrated, and especially African Americans were rising economically, and African Americans wanted to buy fancy houses in white neighborhoods. Then, in response to that attitude, some real estate developers did some really racist stuff called blockbusting. And what these real estate developers would do is they would find a neighborhood where maybe one or two black families just moved in and the rest of the neighborhood's all white. These real estate developers would create these fake stories, and they would really try to pressure the other white people in the neighborhood and say, hey, black people are moving into your neighborhood's going to soon be infested with crime and violence and blah, blah, blah. And white people got scared and they believed it. And so whole neighborhoods would just have massive amounts of white people move out, and then these real estate developers could buy the houses for dirt cheap, and then they could sell them to maybe more minority families, but they would sell them for like double or triple the price they bought them. So it's kind of like blockbusting is like using people's racial fears of each other to your economic advantage. And I know today there's a lot of laws against stuff like this, and real estate developers, if you're found out of stoking racial discrimination in our country, then you're in big trouble. But this is a serious issue, and you can really find this in a whole lot of communities, especially in the 60s and 70s around the United States. All right, moving on. Okay, now the last two slides are about specific kinds of architecture. The first kind is called postmodern. postmodern architecture is just really weird. I have no other way of describing it. There's not a lot of commonalities in postmodern architecture, except for it's usually very colorful. Its shapes are usually very unconventional. All three of these are examples. This is one I've actually been to. This is the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. And it's it's kind of cool. It's this big triangle kind of thing. But yeah, if a building has weird, exceptional, strange styles to it, it's most likely postmodern. And if you're an artsy new building, you're probably going to be styled in this way. If kids ever ask me, like, Mr. Brown, why do we have to learn calculus or advanced math? It's like, well, that way you can build some weird buildings that look like this and the building won't fall over. Okay, next slide. So, NeoClassical architecture. This is a style that's been around for a real long time, and it was really common, especially in the 1700s and 1800s, when Europeans were looking back at ancient Rome and ancient Greece and being like, wow, those buildings are really cool. So what happened in, well, really all over the Western world is they copied ancient Greek and ancient Roman styles of buildings. And these styles, typically, there's a whole lot of columns. There's a whole lot of kind of blocky sort of shapes. There are these rotundas and these domes that typically are featured in most of these buildings. And these buildings are especially common as symbols of government and symbols of like political power. And I've been to many state capitals around the United States, and almost all of them feature this style of architecture. And I've seen some important government buildings in Europe, and almost all of them feature this style of architecture. So this is the Greek and Roman symbols of power and authority that are really common in many capital cities around our world today. So, cool. There you go. All right, and that's it for my stations presentation. Hope you kids learned some stuff. Make sure all this is in your notes. Peace out.